title of the talk I'm sharing today is, I came up with is Tank Shame Through Buddha Activity. So this is a talk about the things that we may feel ashamed about for some reason. So a question I'll just ask us right from the start here is, what are we ashamed of? What are we ashamed of? And each of us will have our own answer to that question. But maybe to start out, well, what does it mean to feel shame? And the way that I've felt it in my own body is discomfort, physical discomfort, sweat, perspiration, heat. And maybe one way to characterize it or to conceptualize it is that there's this, that the discomfort in the body creates a separation between our body and mind. Like the last place we want to be is in our body when we feel shame. The last place we want to be is physically in our body because it's so, there's quite a bit of discomfort there. And it may even provoke some form of moderate dissociation to extreme dissociation, depending on our mental state. But things that can create shame in us are things like struggles with mental health, anxiety, depression, anger, addiction. These are some things that might, when we're aware of those things in ourselves, we might think, oh, I shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't have those problems. I shouldn't have those issues. We have shame around sexuality or sexual expression is another place where shame crops up. We have shame around our past, mistakes that we made in the past. That oftentimes brings up shame for us. Maybe you have shame being a parent. Being a parent causes shame. Or having a child that maybe you wonder, did I do good enough? Am I doing the right thing? I know I feel that shame. I'm like, I'm not good enough. I should be better. Right? There's a should be. In general, we get ashamed of what we think of as a mistake. And whatever we define in our life, whatever constitutes a mistake, there may be some shame around it, and then there's this impetus to change, to do something better. Sometimes shame can bring us to want to do better. More often than not, however, it just continues the cycle of making the same mistake again and again. So how do we deal with the shame? I don't want to say get rid of it, because as soon as we try to push something away, something that we perceive as negative, as soon as we try to push it away, it usually comes back tenfold. Right? And it may come back in a way that we're not conscious of. So we want to keep whatever's there alive, whatever feeling. Instead of thinking about this in terms of shame, we can think about it in terms of what am I feeling in my body? Heat, sweat. Again, the last place with shame we want to be is in our physical body, feeling it, because there's such discomfort. It could be discomfort from the immediate present, but it could be discomfort from something that happened in the past, too. People who've been practicing Zen a while, they sometimes get ashamed about not ringing the bells correctly. Or maybe we get ashamed of not being able to drop our thoughts quickly enough, too attached to thinking. Or incorrect posture might be another one. Oh, I can't do this right. Or how about this one? Not being able to answer a Dharma question correctly. There's a story about this. A past ancient Zen master didn't answer correct, and wasn't able to give an appropriate response. His name in Japanese, the Japanese form of his name is Gu-te, Zen master Gu-te. He was a very famous Zen master. But there's a story about how he got to be that way. He's an interesting character. This Zen master, anybody who came to him with a question, he wouldn't say anything. He would just hold up a finger. Imagine that. Would that work for you guys? You came in, I want to learn how to meditation. I want to learn how to do meditation. What does that mean? Wait a minute. But for Gu-te, it worked. It worked for Gu-te to do that. It must have, because there's still a story we're telling about it. But it didn't. He came to that place because of shame in his own life, a place of shame that maybe we don't think of this as shameful, but he did. And it doesn't matter the reasons for why we feel shame. It can be a motivating factor for us to change. And it was for him, at least. It was a real motivating factor for him to change. So here's the story of how he came to be this great Zen master. Or I should say, how he developed himself, how he worked through his own body-mind separation. Right? So he's a newly ordained monk, and he goes to practice in a solitary hut. That's the first problem. He went to practice all by himself. When you're new to practice, it's not really helpful, I think, to practice all by yourself, if you can help it at all. For a lot of folks, it's hard to find a place to practice or a group of people like-minded to practice with. But for him, he was a monk, he should have been practicing with a community. I don't know why he wasn't. Maybe he had a good reason. Maybe that was their practice back then. Maybe he did practice with a community and the story doesn't tell it. In any case, we just know, the only information I have is that he went to practice by himself. That's an advanced practice. Practicing by yourself is really advanced. It's hard to do. As many of you may attest to, when you try to do this practice by yourself, it's really challenging. We get buoyed by the support of others. A nun comes by, a Buddhist nun comes by to challenge him. She says to him, please give me a word of Dharma and I will take my hat off to you. I'll show you my respect. If you can present me one word of Dharma or a phrase of the Dharma. So he gets all flummoxed by this. He's all confused. He starts sweating. Probably he's getting some heat in his body. And he fails to give any response whatsoever. He's just dumbfounded by the question. So the monk says, well, in that case, I will take my leave. And she does not tip her hat to him. He's very embarrassed by this experience, and he realizes he doesn't know very much. So he decides he must leave this hut and go seek the answer that she was looking for. And he meets this old man along the way. Shortly, just as he's getting ready to leave his little hut, he meets this old monk. And the monk asks him, what seems to be the problem? And he relates the story of the nun to her, and he says, the old monk says, would you like to know the answer? And he's like, yes, please tell me the answer. So this old monk says, all truths are found here. This is the one finger. All truths are found here. And Gu-te has this mystical experience. He sees in the one finger, he sees the great multitudes in pain, suffering. He also sees them in bliss, in joy. He sees people that are angry. He sees people that are happy. He sees the highs and the lows of life. Everything is one. He sees the separation. He sees the unity. And he has some kind of realization. The basic teaching of Zen, one of the foundational teachings, is that we exist in a world that contains both unity and plurality. The plurality is the way that we understand the many, many differences in the world. There's multiple religions, there's multiple cultures, there's multiple skin colors, and there are such a variety of species that exist in the world today. And underlying all of that multiplicity, all of that diversity is unity. That's there too. And in general, we get caught in the multiplicity of forms, and we see ourselves as separate from others that appear different from us. That's our fundamental ignorance, what Buddhism defines as ignorance. Ignorance has nothing to do with how smart you are in Buddhism. You don't have to be smart to realize, to see ignorance, to be ignorant. And we all get caught in ignorance, myself included. We get caught in separation, seeing ourselves as separate from others. We also need to be able to see ourselves as distinct and separate from others. That's a survival technique. We are unique, each of us are unique, and we have our own roles to play that are different from other people. And to the degree that we can know what we need to do and carry that out, we're going to lessen our suffering quite a bit. We know what our particular role is. Get clear about that. But the other piece is that there's this underlying unity that is always present, that is beyond our realization of it. It's always there. And one of the analogies that is used in Zen is the analogy of the water and the wave. The water and the wave are never separate. The wave has a beginning, it has a birth, it has a sustaining period where it has a life, and then it has a death. And all that time, birth, maintenance, and death, it's always with the water. It's never separate from the water, the ocean that is it. The ocean and the wave are never separate. We individuals are like waves on the ocean, and at the same time, we are the ocean itself. This is the foundational teaching of Zen. And you can take that teaching anywhere you go, whatever it is that you're doing. When we really connect with the water, with the ocean, we find some serenity. Our world really needs to connect with, to see our oceanic sense. And that has to happen here in the United States. And obviously in the present time, we hear a lot in the media about Israel and Palestine. Certainly that needs to happen there too. We can't always control what's happening in another country, but we definitely can control what's happening in our own life to a certain degree within our own family. And we can always start there. We can always start with our own mind and the way that we perceive reality. Doesn't mean things are going to get easier for us or better, but we got to start somewhere. And we can all start with the way that we perceive reality. Start from there. And what we're doing here in this Zen Center is providing a safe space to connect with that, what we call ultimate reality. The ultimate reality of the water and the wave are one. And we practice seeing that here. Zazen, seated meditation, is a way to practice seeing that water and wave are not separate, that we're always We're always embraced by the entire cosmos, to put it simply. We're always embraced by everything, whether we realize it or not. It's hard to see that when we're out driving in a car sometimes, because we need to keep our eyes on the diversity, the difference, for survival's sake. It's hard to see that in our workplace at times, or even in our family. Maybe easier in our family, but even then it can be challenging. So this master, this old master of Gute, then when Gute realizes that all things are this, the master disappears. We don't know if he was a real person or if Master Gute dreamed him up. We don't know. But in any case, when anybody would ask Master Gute a question, he would just hold up his finger. He's not in his head anymore. That's where we get caught up. The shame response is often in excessive thinking about something. Should I do this or should I do that? Why didn't I do this? Why did I do that? And we just spin out of control with our thoughts. What if we were to bring our attention back to the physical body? The body contains great wisdom, and we often don't realize that. We don't see the wisdom of our body. In the finger is the entire universe. In fact, Buddhism says that in a molecule or an atom, one atom contains the entire universe. Our bodies contain the entire universe. The entirety of the universe can be found in your body. That's what we sit with when we're meditating. That's why we can sit upright and be happy. It's because the whole universe is right here. We don't have to go someplace else. What's the use of going out to a foreign place, a foreign country to practice? We can find everything right here, right now, if we really look. So the etiquette that we find in the Zendo is meant to help us to concentrate our minds in the present moment. We don't have to feel shame about doing it wrong. It's to help us concentrate. And this monk, the nun challenged him to concentrate deeper. What we need to focus on is not so much the making mistakes in the Zendo, but living our life as if the precepts are real. And some of you know about the precepts, maybe some of you don't, but this is the foundation for a meditation practice, is living by the precepts. Making a mistake in the etiquette in the Zendo is not a big problem, not an issue at all. It's just to help us focus our attention. What we really want to focus on is how we live our life outside of the Zendo. And for that, Buddhism has what's called the precepts, foundational ethical principles that we can carry with us anywhere we go. And these precepts include affirming life, not unnecessarily taking life, speaking truthfully, speaking words of encouragement, of love to others, being generous with our time and resources to whatever extent we can, being faithful in our relationships. That's wonderful when we proceed in a relationship with some degree of commitment. It's not just touch and go. And the fifth one is living a healthy lifestyle. So all those things that you hear about diet and exercise, those are important too. We want to end our suffering. We got to watch what we put into our body and how we use our body and develop our body. One way to think about shame is that it's a teaching. it's a teaching from the universe. Right? The universe puts us in this position where it almost intentionally pulls our body and mind apart so that we can see that there's some work that we need to do. It's like if you can imagine being gobbled up. And when you gobble something up, when you eat something, you're releasing a lot of energy, right? Food, you chew the mandibles, right? It breaks apart the material, and then that energy goes into your body and you're nourished by it. So in a sense, when you feel that kind of shame, that's not a bad thing. You're nourishing the universe with that. The universe is being nourished by that breaking up of your energy. And what we're doing, then we need to respond to that. And Zen gives us an opportunity to respond to that breaking up of our energy, that feeling of heat, that release, sweat that comes through. Okay, now be still. Be still and listen. That energy will come back to you. It's kind of like the resurrection. You fall apart and then you come back together. You breathe in and then you breathe out. Everything does that. You do it, the animals do it, the plants do it. Inhale, exhale. The whole universe is expanding and then it contracts. Fall, winter, spring, summer, fall, right? Everything is expanding and contracting. Sometimes we expand and we don't want to expand. We're kind of get comfortable. We get comfortable contracting and feeling solid. But the universe says you can't stay there. This is the first law of Buddhism. Impermanence, everything changes. You can't stay there in that comfort zone. You got to expand. And then you think, oh, okay, well then I'll expand. Maybe you get yourself aligned finally with expansion. You start to feel big and grow. And the universe says, no, you can't stay there. And it takes you back down to size. Wow, shoot, I wanted to stay expanded. You don't get to stay there. We don't get to stay there. Maybe for a little bit, and it might feel good, or it might not. Really what we're doing is riding the wave, right? We're learning to get on the surfboard of life and ride those waves up and down. That's what we're learning to do. That's when we're sitting Zazen, that's what we're learning. Oh, this wave is getting higher and higher. This wave is going lower and lower. If you're on a wave that's going lower and lower, don't worry. You can anticipate that wave is eventually going to come back up. Right? So what we can do is become curious about what our experience is. When you're feeling heat in the body, for example, sweat in the body, becoming curious, discomfort in the body, becoming curious, investigating, looking at it. What is this? Bringing the kindergarten mind to it, bringing the beginner's mind. What is this? Bringing curiosity to our physical body. So what's happening physically? You don't have to change your thoughts, just bring them down into the body. And what we do here in the Zen Center is we provide a space in order to do that. We're just providing a space to do that. I'll tell you a story about my teacher's teacher. First, my teacher, she said, there are 3 gates to Zen practice. There's 3 gates. The first one is impermanence. Everything changes. And that is a big impetus for us to begin to practice. So what do I mean by practice? Just watch what's going on and get curious about it. But some people enter the gateway of practice through self-improvement. That's another gate. You want to do better in some way. A third one, she says, is repentance. We've done something we really regret and we want to change. Maybe we hurt somebody unintentionally, or maybe we hurt ourselves in some way. We want to change. We want to put it right. And so here's a story of my teacher's teacher. His name, a Japanese teacher named Noda Daito. He was a businessman, and his family had migrated to Manchuria, to China, during the time of the Second World War, when the Japanese occupied China. And when the war ended, guess what happened? They lost all of their land, and they were forced back to Japan. And they didn't have very much. They ended up having to, they had five children. His parents had 5 children. He was the oldest. And I believe one of them they had to put give to somebody else to take care of. So they didn't have very much after World War II. And he initially became a businessman and an acupuncture doctor. He was new to acupuncture, and has anybody here done acupuncture? Yeah, I find that's very effective. Good way to heal the body. And recently had a few acupuncture treatments, very, very effective. So if you get somebody who knows what they're doing, then it can be really helpful. But I think he was so new that he doubted himself. And one of the patients he worked on died shortly after his treatment. So he thought he was responsible. He thought maybe the way that I treated him was actually killed him. He felt so bad, he was very ashamed. And he went to do what most Japanese do, or I should say many Japanese do, when they're having trouble. He went to the bar, got himself a drink. And who was at the bar? The Zen priest. He was hanging out there. So he sat down next to him and started having some drinks with him. And because he had a few drinks in him, he was a little bit more conversational. I don't recommend doing this, by the way. It's breaking the precepts. But in his case, he had a conversation with the person who came to become his teacher. And he related that he thought he killed somebody, and maybe he should become a priest to work out this bad karma that he has acquired. You know, when you make a vow, that's another piece of Zen practice, is to vow the impossible vow. We have 4 of them. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to master them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to realize it. Right? Those are 4 general vows. And he thought, maybe if I vow to live a life of a monk, I'll get over this shame that I feel. Well, his teacher said, well, you don't know if you actually killed him or not. Why don't we wait for the autopsy and see what happens? And the autopsy actually turned out to be other reasons for it. But still, he had that initial sense that maybe I can do something to change. And he acquired a lot of energy from his vow to change something about it. He realized he didn't do it, but he had already, something opened up in him because of this feeling. Maybe he made a mistake. Something opened up in him. And even though he didn't have anything to do with it, he said, that was the push that I needed to get on this path. And in his case, he decided, well, I'll become a monk. And he went to train. He went to train for a few years at a Zen monastery. And then he came back to that plot of land that his parents had acquired. It was their ancestry's land. It didn't have they had a dilapidated house on it that was falling and caving in on itself. And he started to build a temple. He started to make a temple, and he made a school for children that are bullied, and he teaches them how to fight. He teaches them martial arts so that they learn how to fight. So this is the way his particular practice manifested. What can I do better for the world? So we can ask ourselves that too. Whatever mistakes that we've made in the past, we can use those mistakes to think about, how can I do better? I remember going to a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh. He often shared this in some of his talks. He would share that because he was Vietnamese, he had a lot of people following him that were Vietnam veterans, and they had deep regrets about what they did in the war. Some of them have horrible stories of what they did. And Thich Nhat Hanh's response to them is, well, there's still a lot of hungry children that need care. Why are you focused on the mistake you made in the past? There's plenty you can do right now. So you see, we just refocus our efforts, our energy towards something that's what we can do right now. We can't change the past, but we can look at what's wrong with the present and see what we can do, what's unique to us. There's not one answer to this question, but each of us has our own karma, we call it karma, action to deal with, that's unique to us. And that's what we need to focus on. For me, in my family, addiction runs fairly deep. Alcoholism, mental illness. And so I wanted to do something that helped to deal with that better. I share with people, the first time I sat next to my teacher, I felt better than I'd ever felt without drinking or smoking pot. Felt good. I was like, wow, why didn't I learn this? and what I wanted to do was teach it. I got to share this with everybody. And my teacher said, don't share it with anybody. Wait, you got to learn it yourself. It's not enough to learn it, like sit one time, feel better, and teach it. That's not good. Learn it yourself, integrate it into your own life. And for me, that took a long time. It took years. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but for me, that was the path. So what I'd like to just conclude with the doorway, one doorway to our practice can be our past mistakes. And to look at those past mistakes can be it can generate a lot of energy if we do that in the ways that I've mentioned. You don't have to be ashamed of anything. Just see what you can do to change and make small steps to do that, little by little. Any small step you make is important to take. You got to take it. You got to start, and you can always start right now. You can always start right now. Thank you.
So we usually have time for questions or comments. Anything that anybody would like to ask about or raise in connection with Daishin's talk?
Yeah, anything you want to share openly here is fine. There'll be other opportunities more informally in the lounge here, or you can also email me if you want.
Yeah, thank you. I'm always surprised how, when I listen to your talks, how I think back to how the past and the present seem to combine. And I was reading an article recently from Popular Mechanics, and it talked about what is consciousness. And it said that consciousness, what they've started to theorize, is a quantum wave. And they've looked at photosynthesis, they've looked at plants, they've looked at models of the human brain and how it works, and that basically they're starting to see evidence that they still don't know what consciousness is or what it is, but they're thinking that it's somehow this quantum wave that can be both a 1 and a 0, and it can be everywhere at the same time. And so when you talk about the plurality, but yet the unity, it kind of led me to think like there's evidence that I'm seeing in the realm of science that is starting to reinforce that kind of thinking.
Yeah, the Buddhism is not opposed to that at all. Right? On a molecular level, this is the reality. And now science is just demonstrating that, looking under a microscope. So I've not seen that with my own eye, but that sounds pretty cool. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone online? Any questions or anything?
Hey, there, and
Sure.
wow.
So something that my partner and I have been talking about just recently. Um, so I've remained basically more COVID cautious than really anyone I know since restrictions have lifted. Like still checking the tracker for Lancaster County, still masking up most of the time, still trying to keep outdoors for interactions, stuff like that. And I often still feel like I'm doing the bare minimum. Like I'm not really turning down opportunities for like indoor dining with friends or anything like that. And there's been a sort of dissonance for me for a while with that. On the one hand, feeling like I'm not doing enough, but also seeing that I'm still doing more, and that uh, has not been helped with this last week, starting like Tuesday, Wednesday. My partner and I and our little one all came down with COVID. And I've been struggling with that for the last few days. My partner's been hit not physically the hardest. I've been sort of the most symptomatic of us this go around, but emotionally hit hardest. One still struggling with like the postpartum depression, and then also seasonal affection setting in, and then since she's been less cautious about like masking up and stuff than I have, then it's taking on the blame of like, oh, I made our child sick. And that's not obviously like we all got sick at the same place. I was there in unmasked as well. This is in no way her fault specifically, but that's something that she's been sort of dwelling on, being in kind of a darker place already. Though I, of course, feel that as well because I was also there. I got sick from the same place. Kiara got sick from the same place. And so that's thinking about like going forward. Uh, I don't really know how that feeling is going to shape like our future decisions to be out in public and whatever. I don't want that to be like shame driven. I don't want it to be like, oh, we feel so bad about like our 2 month old being catching COVID that we turn into hermits or whatever. But also, um, obviously, there is risk here. We all got hit, so it's just hard to make that judgment. I don't really have like a specific question with that, I guess, but I thought I'd share like that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take this show outside the Zendo and share a little bit more then. Yeah, announcements.
We do have Rohatsu is the next big thing coming down the pike, and that's the annual retreat that we have to celebrate the Buddha's enlightenment. It's going to be starting, it's 5.5, or basically kind of 5 days. It's from Thursday, the 30th of November through midday, Tuesday, December 6th, I believe. And if you look online, you can participate in this retreat in many different ways. You could pick a day, you can, if you don't want to register, you can come in the evenings. There's a lot of options for participation, so I really encourage people to check it out and, you know, see what fits for you in terms of participating in this retreat.
Yeah, if you want to practice more than just on Sunday with the Sangha, that'll be a good time. Evening hours during that period.
And the other thing is that we're doing our annual Giving Tuesday fundraiser. So if any of you are feeling generous or know anybody who's feeling generous, that culminates, I think, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Pardon?
Matching fund.
Oh, yeah, and we have a matching, thank you, Jenny. We have a matching fund of $8,000, so anything that you give will be matched. And you could give on the website or in any other form that you want to. I think that's it. We will be closed for Thanksgiving weekend, starting on Thursday and going through next Sunday.
I want to give a plug to our YouTube channel. All of our Dharma talks are available a couple of weeks after in person. You can send them to your friends or family, like and subscribe, all the good stuff. It helps bring awareness to people, and it's a good, almost like a podcast you can listen to. So.
I'd also like to give a shout out to Mike and Ken, who spent a hard day's work here yesterday rebuilding part of the wheelchair ramp. Just a few more steps to go, and there's a cat that's going to be disappointed when you finish that. Living under there right now. Okay, I think we're going to close a